Welcome to Betrayal Narratives. In today's story, I'm sharing something that changed my life forever. Something that taught me that betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the people you trusted to protect what you love most. Hit like, subscribe for more powerful betrayal stories, and drop your location in the comments. My name is Adrienne, and for 23 years I served as a Navy SEAL commander. I led teams into some of the most complicated and unpredictable environments on Earth. People think military life hardens you, but it only sharpens what you already carry inside: your discipline, your instincts, your dedication. But as prepared as I was for the outside world, nothing prepared me for the betrayal that unfolded inside my own family. I always believed my son Julian would grow into a man who charted his own path, someone who didn't need to follow my legacy to be extraordinary. He was quiet, thoughtful, and deeply loyal. And maybe that's why what happened hurt me in ways I still struggle to put into words. It didn't happen all at once. No betrayal ever does. It creeps in slowly, disguised as normal life, hidden behind things you tell yourself are probably nothing. If I had paid more attention, if I had trusted my instincts, maybe I would have seen the early signs. But I didn't. And that's why everything spiraled the way it did. The first moment something felt wrong was 3 months before Julian's disappearance. Not a tragic disappearance, but an emotional one. He didn't vanish physically. He vanished from us in his own quiet way. That makes the story cleaner, but not any easier. I remember sitting at the dinner table that night. Eliza, my wife, was serving lasagna, Julian's favorite. She looked exhausted but radiant in that way. She always did, moving with the soft strength of someone who spent her life taking care of others. Julian stepped into the dining room with a distracted expression on his face, holding his phone in one hand, eyes scanning the screen like he was waiting for something urgent. He wasn't the type to be glued to his phone. In fact, he used to tease his friends for being too attached to their screens. But that night, his phone vibrated. And his entire expression changed, much more than a simple text from a friend should have triggered. He took a seat beside me, mumbled something about a group assignment, and kept eating quietly. That should have been the red flag, but I brushed it off. Kids these days, I thought. Group projects, deadlines, distractions. I had no idea it was the beginning of something much bigger. Over the next week, his behavior became more unusual. Left home early, came back later than usual. Avoided conversations by pretending to be busy. But none of it felt dangerous, just odd. When I asked how school was going, he always responded with the same line. "Fine, Dad. Just a lot on my plate." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. The real truth came to light unexpectedly one morning when I noticed his backpack unusually heavy. I'm not the kind of father to snoop through personal items, but something made me ask about it. "What's in the bag, Jules?" I asked casually. Julian froze. His face stiffened just a bit, barely noticeable if you weren't trained to read micro-expressions. "Just books," he replied quickly, hoisting it over his shoulder. Too quickly. That was when a small voice inside me said something was deeply wrong. But I let him go again. Why? 'Cause I trusted him. Because Julian had always been a good kid. And because I didn't want to be the father who interrogated every breath his son took. I would learn later that trust, when misplaced, becomes an open invitation for heartbreak. A few weeks later, Julian's college counselor called. She told me he had missed 2 major deadlines. Julian, the same kid who color-coded his calendar and set reminders for everything. That's when my alarm bells truly started ringing. I asked Julian about it that night. He sighed, rubbed his forehead, and said, "Dad, please, I'm handling it. Can we not do this right now?" The avoidance wasn't disrespect, it was fear. It's the kind of fear someone feels when they're re-hiding something they know how to confess. I sat down beside him on the couch. "Jules, you know you can talk to me, right? About anything." He nodded, but his eyes drifted away, and the moment slipped through my fingers like water. The next part of the story is the one that still makes my chest tight. Because it's when I realized that the betrayal I was dealing with wasn't just Julian's secrecy. It was a deeper fracture, one I didn't know existed between mother and son. I was going through some old documents in my study routine things. Bills, tax paperwork, notes from work. I wasn't looking for anything out of the ordinary. But then I found an envelope addressed to Eliza, dated 11 months earlier. My name was nowhere on it. It wasn't hidden, but it wasn't placed anywhere you'd easily notice either. The return address was from Julian's university. Curious, I opened it. What I found wasn't a scandal or anything dramatic. It was an academic warning letter. Julian had been struggling in one of his major classes the previous year. What stunned me wasn't the warning. It was the fact that the school had asked Eliza to sign a parental acknowledgement form. And she had signed it. Without telling me? Without telling Julian that she had intervened on his behalf. My hands shook, not out of anger, but confusion. Why would she hide something like this? It didn't make sense. Our family had never kept academic issues a secret. We always faced things together. I waited until that evening to talk to her. Eliza stood in the kitchen cutting vegetables, her expression peaceful. I placed the letter on the counter. She froze mid. "Eliza," I asked gently, "why didn't you show me this?" She took a deep breath. "Because Julian asked me not to. He didn't want you to worry." That sentence hit me harder than any battlefield impact I'd ever experienced. "Didn't want me to worry?" I repeated quietly. "I worry because I'm his father. That's my job." "He thought you'd be disappointed," she whispered. That was the moment everything started to click. Yeah. The secrecy, the late nights, the stress, the avoidance. Why was Julian so afraid of disappointing me? I never pressured him to follow in my footsteps. I never demanded excellence. So why? Elisa bit her lip, hesitating. "There's more," she said softly. Those two words shifted the entire frequency of the room. She led me upstairs to our bedroom, opened her closet, and pulled out a small lockbox I had never seen before. Inside were a series of letters from Julian to Eliza written over the past year. Each one filled with emotional weight, vulnerability, and an anxiety I never knew my son carried. The letters weren't about crime, danger, or anything dramatic. They were about identity. Expectations, pressure he felt because I was his father, a respected military figure whose reputation seemed unshakable. He felt overshadowed, afraid to fail, afraid I would compare him to myself, afraid he would let me down. And he'd begged Eliza not to tell me. He begged her to help him navigate school privately so he could fix himself before I found out. That's when the betrayal hit, not because Julian lied, but because Eliza agreed. She had kept these secrets for almost a year, protecting Julian from my hypothetical disappointment. And without realizing it, they had pushed me out of my own son's life. In that moment, I felt like a stranger in my own family. I wasn't angry, just heartbroken. It's because the two people I loved most had carried a silent burden, believing I couldn't handle the truth. Believing I would judge instead of support. I sat on the edge of the bed with the letters spread out before me. Pages filled with Julian's handwriting, messy, rushed, emotional. Each letter painted a picture of a young man drowning in expectations he thought existed but never actually did. Eliza sat beside me, tears welling in her eyes. "I thought I was helping," she whispered. "I thought he needed space from the pressure. I didn't realize I was creating a wall between you two." I didn't respond immediately. I didn't want to say something fueled by hurt. After a long silence, I finally spoke. "We're supposed to be a team, you and me. We can't keep secrets like this. Not about him." Eliza nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "You're right. I didn't blame her. I didn't blame Julian. Betrayal doesn't always come from malice. Sometimes it comes from fear. From love twisted into a shape that suffocates rather than supports." The next morning, I asked Julian to talk. He hesitated, but eventually sat across from me in the living room. The energy between us was thick and uncomfortable, but necessary. I placed the letters gently on the table. He froze, his breath catching. "Dad, I can explode." I held up my hand. "Julian, I'm not angry. I am hurt. Why didn't you come to me?" His eyes filled instantly with tears. He tried to blink away. "Case skew? You," he whispered. "You're strong. You're respected. People listen to you, and I'm just me. I didn't want you to think I was weak. I leaned forward, trying not to break. Son, strength isn't about hiding your struggles. It's about letting people in. It's what I wanted for you. He swallowed hard. I thought if I fixed everything first, you'd be proud of me. I didn't realize you'd rather help me than watch me pretend. I reached across the table and held his hands. Julian, the only way you could ever disappoint me is by believing you had to hide from me. He cried, then quietly, painfully, the way someone cries when a heavy weight finally lifts. And that was the beginning of rebuilding what had been broken. We spent the rest of the morning talking. We spent the rest about school, about pressure, about fear, about expectations he had invented in his mind. I told him stories from my own past times I failed, times I questioned myself, times I felt lost. Things I never thought to share before because I assumed he didn't need to hear them. He did. Over the next few weeks, things slowly fell into place. Julian sought tutoring. His grades improved. We had family dinners without secrets. Eliza and I rebuilt our communication. We promised each other never to let silence create distance again. What I learned is that betrayal doesn't always come with broken trust. It sometimes comes with broken communication, with assumptions, with misunderstandings, with fear of vulnerability, and healing doesn't come from punishment, comes from honesty. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you love, or if you've ever been the one who hid the truth thinking it would help, remember this: secrets create walls, but conversations build bridges. Thanks for listening to this story. If you want more emotional, real-life betrayal narratives, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And remember, sometimes the deepest betrayals happen quietly, but so do the most powerful reconciliations.